Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bob Rietveldt. I'm one of the directors and co-founders of SwitcH2. Thank you very much for attending this small technical session, and I also want to thank the organization for having us here. It's a bit warm inside the building, so we're going to talk about something a bit cooler, and that is production of hydrogen in seawater. And hopefully afterwards you understand what that means. So here we go. So being part of the energy transition is a very dynamic place where we want to be. So of course everybody sees the development on electrifying the society and building all kinds of offshore wind farms and onshore solar plants. But we are dealing also with challenges on that respect. So the one size fits all cannot just be electricity. We need also other derivatives of renewable energy, being hydrogen and green ammonia, because we see a lot of problems now with the congested grid around Europe especially. And in the summertime we actually switch off wind turbines nowadays because it's not economical to use them. So we need something else that can actually run 24/7 and can be used and stored, and that can be of course hydrogen and ammonia. We also see this supply demand and location mismatch, because what we need is cheap electricity, which is not available in most European countries, but that's where we have the demand for hydrogen and ammonia. So we need to make sure that we can produce at locations where we have cheap electricity and bring that towards our off-takers here in Europe. The other big point is security. We cannot make the same mistake as we did before, relying on oil from others or relying from gas on others. So we're going to also have to produce locally to make sure that we have our energy security here in Europe. And last but not least, we have a big sea in front of us, and we have very scarce land where people live. So doing things offshore makes a lot of sense, because we started drilling onshore, then we moved to offshore. We started building wind turbines onshore, then we moved to offshore. So for hydrogen production and ammonia production, it's also logical to think about putting that eventually offshore. So that's where we're going to go, and those kind of challenges we are going to solve with our solution. So what we have is an FPSO solution, which stands for a fully integrated production, storage and offloading unit. And you will see in a minute what that means. But that means that we can build a floating unit at locations around the world which are best outfitted and also cheapest to build actually our hydrogen or green ammonia plant. It can be modular, it can be standardized design. So once we have done our first project, actually the next project is a derivative of the first project, because we scale up in size, but we don't have to reinvent the technology anymore. With our FPSO, we are in the seawater, and seawater of course is an abundance that we have around in the world, and we'll use that as the basis for our product, which of course for seawater we will do something before it gets into the electrolyzer, but our eventual dream is to use seawater directly in the electrolyzers, avoiding actually the desalination plant on board the unit and cost saving as a result. So I think we have, when you look at it from a safety and risk point of view, doing things offshore has a better risk profile than doing it onshore, especially in urban areas or distressed areas. So, and we will have far less complex permitting process, because we actually only take up a seabed occupation with our mooring system, and that's all that we do on the permitting side. So FPSOs are not new. It is something that has been there already for more than 40 years, and it's been really the success factor in offshore oil and gas. So we started in the 1970s with the first FPSOs, and that were producing oil, and gas was a byproduct. And eventually we moved to very large FPSOs that actually did what we call liquefied natural gas, based on a huge gas field offshore Mozambique or other areas in Australia where there's big gas reserves, and then we convert that to liquefied natural gas. And now we are at the other stage of the evolution, the FPSO concept, but now being used for producing green fuels in the form of hydrogen and its derivative. So not an evolution, not a revolution, but a logical step up in sequence. Our company. Today, SwitcH2 is a project developing company which develops projects around the world based on our solution. And we have two strong shareholders in our company. One is BW Offshore, which is a Norwegian offshore FPSO contractor with a Singapore base. And they operate a large fleet of FPSOs, and they are our technology partner in developing this project. And the other shareholder that we have is Mr. Wim van Aalst, who has a shipping company and has been trading a lot on Africa and has actually sold this company to Hapag-Lloyd. He is now becoming an investor in our company. We work with large companies around the globe to develop our project. We work with ThyssenKrupp on the ammonia synthesis side, which is of course a big name and a big contributing to our project. We work on research together with the TU Delft here in the Netherlands on the direct use of seawater. We work with Stroom, which is a composite pipeline manufacturer in the Netherlands, whereby we can offload our product directly to the gas pipeline infrastructure in the North Sea. And we work with Siemens Energy to actually look at producing a contribution of wave energy in our FPSO to be able to take a higher base load on our electrolyzer profile. So to be less depending on the intermittent supply. So we have a timeline. This company is now lasting already for 3 years. We are still in the development stage. And we took the whole year of 2022 to establish what we call proof of concept. So based on technical merits and also commercial merits, we decided after 2022 this is a really viable project. And then we're going to what we call the FEED stage or the basic engineering stage. And by the end of this year, we will be able to have basically locked in a power purchase agreement for a project offshore Portugal, an offtake agreement for the green ammonia, and also the shipyard contracts and components with all the major vendors. So we'll be able to take what we call financial FID by the end of this year, and then we start constructing in 2025, and then we should be able to produce our first green ammonia from 2029 onwards. So that is our timeline where we are, and we are on track to get there. So in the picture, this is how it looks like. You have basically on the left-hand side the renewable source, which can be offshore, but can also be onshore, depending on the location where we are. Then that is fed into our FPSO, where we produce the hydrogen with the electrolyzers on top, and with the ammonia synthesis, we then convert the hydrogen into a liquid form and store it inside the FPSO. And then every 60 days, we have at the stern of our FPSO a shuttle carrier that actually, where we pump in the liquid ammonia, and that takes it towards the location where the ammonia needs to be brought to shore. So that is the ammonia case. In case of the North Sea, we can actually offload directly hydrogen. If there's a pipeline available in the neighborhood, we can actually offload the pipeline via a infrastructure which is already existing, and we can mix it up with natural gas to bring actually the hydrogen back to shore. The market, we foresee, especially on the ammonia side, we foresee a very growing market. That's to do with the fact that the principle of ammonia being very high density and therefore easy to store and transport. It will become, as we see, one of the biggest fuels for shipping lines in the future. MAN, Wärtsilä, and all the other big manufacturers of engines are already testing engines that run purely on ammonia with a small pilot fuel to ignite the ammonia. So that's development going on, and ships have been ordered with what we call dual fuel engines that can run on ammonia. And you will see that some of the harbors in the world will pay incentives or lower their taxation for allowing ships to come in which are green and therefore have to pay less harbor money. Ammonia is a mature commodity. It's been traded already for 40 years. It's basically the backbone of the fertilizer industry. So pricing is available today. You can actually look up on the internet and see the pricing of blue, gray, and also green ammonia, what it has to be. So there is a real benchmark to what pricing levels we need to be and adhere to with our project. So we think that that market is going to grow big time, and even if you look at, say, a low scenario or a high scenario, you will see that today the fertilizer industry is about 185 million tons of ammonia per year. And that will grow significantly to almost sixfold its amount. So it's a big task, it's a big volume, and one FPSO does not cut it. We will need many more projects, but I think we are part of the solution that unlocks this huge potential of ammonia. So our technology. So what you see basically is a ship-shaped unit. It's going to be moored near shore or offshore, and it faces and stays there for its entire life. The design life of an FPSO is 25 years, and it never comes back into the harbor. It's basically a production ship, which stays there on location, and it's actually weather vaning around a turret. A turret is like a large bearing inside the ship, which is moored to the seabed, and the vessel can actually rotate around it, so it always feels the minimum environmental forces to act on the hull. So on the front side, you will see the accommodation, which is the safe part, and the further we go back on the FPSO, the more dangerous it becomes, because we're always facing upwind conditions. We are always on the safe side of our process side. So you have the safety equipment on the bow of the ship, also the helideck, the living quarters, and then the hull is with the storage of the tanks, and then the top side is basically the electrolyzer modules and the ammonia synthesis, and then we offload by the stern via an offloading system to a shuttle carrier. What are we talking about? This is a vessel which is in significant size. We're talking about something like 270 meters long, 57 meters wide. So it will be a real landmark when at sea, but it's nothing ordinary. FPSOs have been built much bigger than that. So it's actually a fairly normal size of FPSO, which we're going to build mostly in China with the hull and the top sides, but we can bring it together at the location where we want to integrate. That can be either in Asia, but could also be near a project where we are actually going to produce. So it depends on the location where we bring it together. So our typical mooring system is, like I said, 100 meters of water depth. We can even go shallower to 40 meters, but we can also go deeper if we want to. So if you look towards floating wind in the future, then floating wind with floating production makes an even more logical scenario in the future. So like I said, we have about 60 days of storage in our ship. And then the shuttle carrier comes along, we empty the ship, but we keep on producing, and the shuttle carrier takes it to harbors like Rotterdam or Zeebrugge or Hamburg to offload the green ammonia. So our power supply is basically depending on how we do it. If we go from an offshore wind farm or from an onshore grid, we will have a high voltage power income into the vessel that goes via what we call electrical swivel stack. Then it's actually distributed on board to a lower voltage, a lower amount of power. And then we will use mostly the heat recovery from the electrolyzers to minimize the amount of power that we produce on board. Like renewables, there will be days when we don't have any wind, don't have any waves, don't have any solar. So we have to depend also on a case whereby we have some what we call internal fuel on board, and also for emergency cases. So we still have an essential load factory that we can produce our own power in case we need it, because we can rely always on the renewable side. But that is part of the equation that we have to solve. That's it for me. So thank you very much for your attention, and this is what SwitcH2 is all about.